Most of the people following this show trust in science, or at least I believe so. I know for a fact there are some mathematicians, physicists and medical doctors among 2000 and you that follow my adventures on a weekly basis. And we have all been there. We witnessed some strange events, or at least we heard from some of our close friends that we cannot really explain scientifically. Let's call those strange events miracles.
Someone was praying for health and got his cancer cured. Someone was meditating deeply before a life-changing sports game and won. We all know some people whose sheer existence is a miracle: great athletes, endurance marathon runners, deep divers. We tend to believe they're all closer to gods than us, immortal humans.
And many of us are speechless when religious people or spiritual people or actually anybody who believes in, let's say, higher power ask us, well, can you explain that with your science? Well, I have a good news. Science can explain miracles.
But this story is much more complex than anyone can imagine. It involves new breakthroughs in fields of medicine, stories of some great endurance athletes, but also new takes on our evolution as humans and how our minds trick us into survival mode.
My name is Vladislav Radak, I'm writer and mathematician, and this is Fabric of Life, a show where we try to fuse art and science to answer most difficult questions that humanity ever faced. And we use a lot of things from, cutting-edge science to analyzing classical paintings, from popular movies to, historical events. We always try to dig deeper to understand what it means to be human in the 21st century. And this time, let me take you on an adventure to the very edge of human existence.
Hello, Instagram.
Bad boy. Run wild. I'm on a mission and I won't stop. No destination, but it's worth a shot. You gotta let me.
But before we start this episode, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any other future adventures. Next week I'm taking you to Bergamo, Italy to finally reveal how one composer united the whole nation. And I know what you're going to say. Well, Vladislav, you're advertising this Italy Bergamo episode for months now and it's not, done yet. Well, we did some extensive editing and we needed some facts and we needed to consult with some historians, and trust me, next week, Bergamo, here we come. Let's start this episode with one really simple experiment, the one that might actually sound familiar to you. I want you to think about the last time you took an aspirin.
Do you remember the feeling of relief as soon as you swallowed the pill? You could sense the drugs move immediately to your head to relieve the pain. I know I can. I drop the pills in my mouth, drink some water, my massive headache starts wearing off, and I'm somehow ready to go back to my research desk to continue working on my unpublishable math papers.
But there is a slight problem with that. You see, pain relievers take on average 20 minutes to actually kick in, to get dissolved in the gut and get effect on our brain. So how it was possible for me to feel the immediate effect?
You see, neuroscientists discovered that our brain plays a complex game. What I felt was my own expectation releasing morphine directly into my brain. My brain knows from many previous aspirin experiences what comes next and triggers the neural tissue that can actually synthesize small doses of morphine.
Our brains are used to produce certain chemicals or to trigger certain body functions when we follow familiar patterns.
If it's hard for you to believe, I want you to do a certain experiment. Next time when your favorite drinking buddy comes over, serve him non-alcoholic beer in a bottle for alcoholic. Or make it free. Can you guess what happens next? Multiple studies have shown that people who think they're drinking booze but are actually drinking non-alcoholic brew feel just as drunk as those drinking the real stuff, or at least for a couple of drinks.
Okay, you want to ask me what it has to do with miracles and their scientific explanations. Well, first of all, I'm a writer. I lay out chapters and then I connect them at the very end, or at least I will try to. But you need to trust me, okay? Now let me change the scenery and topic just for a little bit.
I want you to imagine a man who could endure near freezing water for 45 minutes at once. Imagine if that same man can run a barefoot marathon in the Arctic or swim 50 meters under the ice of frozen lake. What would you say if you know that same man possesses abilities not only allows him to climb Himalayan mountains wearing shorts, but also to shake off everything from chronic pain to Crohn's disease and even Parkinson's?
What would you call that man? A superman? A guru? A prophet? A half-god or something else? You can probably ask, could that man even exist? Well, he exists.
Legendary survivalist and icy water swimmer Wim Hof, 57-year-old Dutchman often referred to as an Iceman, has developed a series of breathing techniques and conditioning exercises, mostly various types of hyperventilation and other ways to purge his body of CO2 that he credits as being the key to his extraordinary abilities. His abilities are covered in detail in Scott Carney's book What Doesn't Kill Us, where Hof, at his part, sees his journey much more spiritual, and for a minute you could believe that he must be a superhuman. He claims that by slowly conditioning oneself to low oxygen states through his breathing exercises or extreme cold through full body muscle clenching exercises, one can channel their spiritual energy and tap into all kinds of hidden powers.
But one of the many reasons why this book is brilliant and a great read is because Carney goes in detail to explain Hof's abilities and explain that through science.
For instance, he suggests that Hof has tapped into a specific type of fat cells called brown adipose tissue that is found in human babies but mostly disappears in adulthood. Through his body training, it is really possible that Hof has encouraged this vestigial fat to play an increased role in trapping heat.
This of course doesn't mean we should have less respect for Hof. He's a goddamn beast. But he actually got there through a combination of his genetic imprint and his long life devotion to extreme training, not by some miracle provided by gods.
Hof is many of the great characters that are capable of such extraordinary triumphs, letting us really wonder if we are witnessing a miracle. For thousands of years, humanity has occasionally glimpsed man's capacity to do seemingly impossible or the miraculous, using only force of will, walking on burning coals, healing the sick, enduring lethal temperature for hours, and for most of the time, without any explanation, we had no choice but to believe that we are witnessing impossible. But today, modern science has revealed a number of fascinating mechanisms for how the brain influences the rest of the body, forming a string of appealing breadcrumbs, leading toward a more satisfying understanding of some of the limits of the human body and how people like Hof overcome them. Take one fascinating lead: the certain and fact expectations have on bodily functions. The mind tends to make predictions and then ensure those predictions come to pass through internal pharmacies, then when lumped together are also called placebo effects.
Now you know exactly why I mentioned you this experiment from very beginning of this video with an aspirin, or the second one with this non-alcoholic beer drinking game. That's the beginning of understanding our superhuman abilities. But of course it's not easy to unlock this pharmacy inside of our bodies. This is where science comes to the rescue.
In his brilliant book extensively covering the science behind all complex ways placebo has an effect on us, called Suggestible You, author Eric Vance talked to scientists around the world who investigate placebos, internal pharmacies, hypnosis, and the power of belief on body and mind. Wolf's ability to heal things like Parkinson's, asthma, chronic pain, and digestive problems gives us the impression that mind can do anything it wants. As it happens, all of those diseases are also highly susceptible to influence of placebo. Contrary to popular belief, not all placebo effects are the same and not all conditions respond to them equally. That's because a big part of placebo effects are chemical, employing things like dopamine, endogenous opioids, serotonin, and untold numbers of other chemicals that your body idly keeps on hand in case it needs to adjust what's happening in the body.
Strong beliefs and placebos don't only affect disease. We see them boosting athletic performance, as Hof demonstrated by swimming under 50 meters of ice. And obviously, he's not the only athlete.
Novak Djokovic, arguably the best tennis player in history, is well known for balancing brutal training regimen with spirituality. From a vegan diet to yoga and meditation, combined with his religiousness deeply rooted in Orthodox Christianity, on the court he gives the impression of spiritual semi-god. His opponents all agree on one: playing against Novak Djokovic is a game of mental toughness first and tennis second.
The longer he plays, the fresher he seems. It looks like Novak Djokovic tapped into some kind of spiritual potential that only he can harvest or understand. Although science cannot make you a world tennis champion, it can certainly help you understand that. And answers are not that complicated.
There might be a whole network of internal chemicals our bodies can dip into for increased performance. In one mind-boggling study from 2008, legendary Italian placebo scientist Fabrizio Benedetti told weightlifters that they could getting performance-enhancing drugs when they were actually getting placebos and secretly lighter weights to lift. Once they believed the drugs were working as perceived by lighter weights, the loads were secretly returned to their normal weight. The force of the athletes were able to produce with their muscles increased while perceived fatigue stayed the same. Christopher Beattie, a sports psychologist at the Canterbury Christ Church University in England, has done a lot of similar placebo performance experiments, considerably demonstrating their ability to give an impressive edge to cyclists, runners, and many other athletes, to the point where the athletes at his school don't always believe what he says. He claims beliefs tap into headroom that every athlete has in their potential, or the idea that the athletes can push themselves to operate between their perceived maximum execution and the maximum that physics and their bodies will allow. The idea of expectation-based bodily responses continues to attract the best scientists to investigate what are the limits and untapped potential in our internal pharmacies.
There are still many questions to be answered by the science. We know for a fact that Parkinson's disease, depression, and pain respond really well to all types of placebos and strong beliefs. After all, we are highly suggestible creatures, and thank goodness for that. Maybe there's a superhuman in each and every one of us.
Hey, Vlad Savradak again here. Thank you for sticking until the very end of this episode. I hope you like it, so, leave it a thumbs up or whatever, share it with your friends. What are suggestions that you're telling yourself? Please subscribe to this channel. Every week I'm taking you on new adventures. Until then, stay tuned and curious, and don't forget, libraries still exist.